kicks, man.
Thanks. I even hired some extra mellow so I can wear all my new Foot Locker gear at the same time.
What?
Mellow 2, mellow 3, mellow 4, mellow 5.
Mellow 5 doesn't look anything like you.
Apologize to mellow 5.
I'm sorry, Mellow 5.
It's okay.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to Ball Don't Lie here on Penn State Sports Night. It's episode 45. Crazy that the podcast has been going this long. Hunter Pitcoff joining alongside Matt Szczypiorksi. But there's a catch. There's one more person on the podcast today. The co-founder of Ball Don't Lie, class of 2019, back on the grind here. He may have never used Zoom before, but he's here today. David Green in the flesh.
Guys, what's up? Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be back on the Ball Don't Lie podcast. How are we doing today?
Oh, man, we're chilling, David. But you know what it is. We got the three-headed monster today. Hopefully we can make things work and we don't step on each other's toes too much. We got two Sixer fans here. They're probably going to come from my neck. But let's talk about Steph Curry here to start things off because he has been lighting the league on fire. He just broke Kobe's record, getting 11 straight games of 30-plus points in a row over the age of 33. He did that against your Philadelphia 76ers. Me and Matt were at Champs watching the game, and Steph Curry single-handedly taking down arguably the top team in the East. I'll throw it to you, Matt, first. What were your reactions seeing that, and how much of a monster is Steph Curry right now?
Well, Hunter, first of all, I hate that you brought that up first, that you only had to mention the Sixers, but that's fine. Yeah, he was nuts in that game Monday. He's been nuts for the past week and a half, last 2 weeks. 11 straight 30-point games is insane. I remember watching the game on Monday night, and just every shot he threw up, I was like, no way that goes in. And then it did. And I was like, what the hell, man? Like, what were the Sixers even supposed to do at that point? There was no way they could have guarded him. He was just dominating that game, and he's dominated every game since then. And it's worth noting, too, that the Warriors have been winning games, too. He's kind of got them back on their winning track. They're still, I believe, at 500 right now, or a game over 500. So they're still kind of in an iffy situation out there in the West, but he does have them playing a lot better.
My friend here, who's a Warriors fan, is over here pumping his fists. Steph Curry's just killing it the last couple of weeks. I'm wondering if they can get into this play-in situation and make the playoffs, if he can continue to, help them win at this level, because, it's Draymond Green, of course, and no Klay Thompson. Andrew Wiggins has made strides, I think, this year, but I just don't know if this team can get past the first round, if they even do, become successful in the play-in. So like you said, Matt, they got to just keep it going. I'm not sure, like, their last 10, 15 games, if they, like, how many exactly they've won, but I think they're in the 9 seed right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so hopefully he can keep it up. It's pretty amazing to watch. Steph Curry, greatest shooter of all time. I think it's not an argument at this point.
Yeah, I don't think it is an argument at this point either, David. You are right. They're currently in the 9 seed. They're probably going to make the play-in tournament, but they're definitely going to have some rough goes about it because if they stay at the 9 or 10, they're going to have to play in 2 play-in games at least if they don't get bounced in the first and go in the lottery. I have gone on record saying how garbage this team is, but Steph Curry is single-handedly doing his thing, and passing Kobe Bryant on any sort of list is quite the accomplishment. But speaking of the GOAT himself, another GOAT, Michael Jordan, will be presenting Kobe Bryant in the Hall of Fame induction, which will be on May 15th, just in a couple of weeks, which is crazy to think. At that point, all 3 of us on this podcast will be Penn State graduates. So, go down memory lane one time there. But what did you guys think? I guess I'll start with you, David. Was Michael Jordan the right guy to present Kobe here?
I think it's only right, Hunter. I mean, I couldn't imagine anyone else who's a better person for that job. Kobe was like, almost like Jordan's protege. You remember the episode of the what was it? The Last Dance, the documentary with MJ. He's like, that Laker boy, he's coming at your throat. So it's just amazing the journey that you got to see Kobe grow up over the course of 20 years in the NBA. And when he passed, like, we looked and realized that half of his life was spent in the NBA, which is that's amazing to think about. So I think it's only right that MJ is the presenter for Kobe.
Yeah, I agree totally. I think in terms of basketball, there's no one better to present Kobe Bryant in the Hall of Fame than Michael Jordan. I mean, like you said, David, he's literally his protege. He's like Kobe was like his little brother. Everything, Kobe's been on record even in that Last Dance in one of the episodes where he was interviewed. Kobe said everything that I got in my game, I got from MJ. So if you're talking about me, you're talking about MJ too. So in terms of basketball, I don't think there's anybody better to present him. If Vanessa Bryant wasn't going to do it, Michael Jordan was the guy who was going to do it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
think some other notable candidates too. I thought Shaq could have been an option. Maybe even Pau Gasol, though he's not in the Hall of Fame, so I didn't know if like it had to be a Hall of Famer presenting him. But yeah, I mean, Michael Jordan obviously gave that super emotional speech at Kobe's memorial in the Staples Center, so it only makes sense. I mean, we always talked about like, oh, like we're never gonna see another Michael Jordan again, and not that I mean Kobe's his own guy, but then Kobe Bryant came along. We're like, all right, never mind. I think we found the next Michael Jordan. So yeah, gotta love Kobe one time there. Anyways, though, let's talk about probably the best two guard in the league right now. That's James Harden. He's going to be out indefinitely with a hamstring. That's kind of a nagging injury. And there's no timetable for his return. The Nets are, of course, coasting, and they're going to get a top 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. But James Harden has had a phenomenal season, arguably the most consistent player on that team. Matt, I just want to know like how the Nets going to hold up because they're not a very deep team either.
No, they're not, and that's the one gripe that we've had with them this whole year, Hunter, is the fact that they've had pretty much no depth, and they've had to go to the buyout market to fill out the rest of their team. Um, will the Nets' big three ever play together? I feel like they've played like 3 games together. Kyrie's been out because he doesn't feel like playing. Kevin Durant's been out for forever, it seems like. And now James Harden, who Mr. Durable, is now has his nagging hamstring injury, like you said, Hunter. Hamstrings are a tough thing to get over. So, if I were to guess, I'd bet that he'd be back right around game 1 of the playoffs. There's probably no rush to get him back for the regular season. The Nets are going to be fine in the playoffs.
Yeah, Matt, like you said, I'm really concerned about the depth with this team. I remember, like you said, I think there's only like 3 or 4 games that the big three played together. I remember a game earlier this year, they played against the Hawks and ended up in like double overtime, came up short. And I don't think I've ever seen the big three play together since. And that was months ago. So if the big three can get in there, I will feel better about the team not having depth. But seriously, it's the biggest question mark possible. You got now 2 guys with hamstring injuries, and then Kyrie just being Kyrie is another massive question mark. That's 3 huge question marks on your big three. So I don't know if it's looking good for the Nets. I believe they're half a game out of first place right now.
Yep.
Yeah, and this Nets team is starting to remind me a lot of the Clippers last year, where it seems like all their guys just can't be healthy and on the court at the same time, and as a result, their team chemistry wasn't that great, and they got bounced by Denver. So this this is not looking good for the Nets, but I will say it's definitely looking pretty good for your Sixers if the Nets can't stay healthy.
Absolutely.
Anyways, though, someone else who we thought would be out for the year, but apparently he's coming back is LaMelo Ball. He broke his wrist, but I guess he was getting a little angry because Anthony Edwards might be running away with the Rookie of the Year award, but not so fast. The Hornets, Matt talked about last week how they've been able to stay afloat despite not having LaMelo Ball on the court, despite not having Gordon Hayward on the court. Guys like Terry Rozier and Miles Bridges and PJ Washington have been absolutely hooping lately. But with LaMelo Ball coming back, Matt, I'll start with you here. How much better is this Hornets team, and how far can they go?
Well, they've really been keeping it together without LaMelo Ball. They've remained really competitive. I know they've been signing a little bit. They're now a game under 500. But they in that Eastern Conference where it seems like everything changes week to week, I feel like we've had completely different standings every week we've been on this podcast and are just talking about this. But, if LaMelo comes back, this team gets an instant boost. He's an offensive playmaker, no doubt about that. And they just become deeper team too. They got a lot of their bench guys back there. Rozier probably goes back to the bench. Devontae Graham gets more touches. And LaMelo Ball, I mean, he's a playmaker, dude. He is a baller, and he is itching to get back on the court. And he's a super healer too. I don't know how the heck he got back so quickly.
I've been very impressed with LaMelo Ball this year. The fact that he's coming back this quickly after that injury, I'm just wondering, did he actually fracture his wrist? Because it hasn't been very long, but I'm glad he's coming back. I think there's about 15 games left in the season or so, give or take. I think he can absolutely contribute and help this team get into the playoff spot. I know I've been the standing guy this podcast so far, but they are the 8 seed right now. I'm looking at, but it's a really tight race, so they can't really afford to lose close games.
You kind of wonder too, is if this is being rushed or not. If you're the Hornets, you're not in a position where he needs to be rushed back because while they are good this year, they are building toward the future. So I think he's progressively getting a lot better, I guess, from the fractured wrist because there's no reason for him to rush him back. So I guess he is really healthy. He's been doing on-court stuff, practicing. He was cleared to do that. So he is going to make his return in the next coming week. So perhaps next week we'll be able to talk about how he looks and how this Hornets team looks because LaMelo Ball, I think, is one of the best young players in the league. I think he's a future franchise player for this team. And the sky's the limit. Also one of the most fun players to watch, too. So it'd be great to have him back on the court.
No doubt about that, man. I mean, LaMelo, he's a ball. Like there were clips of him just like itching to get back into a game. I mean, you know how SportsCenter zooms in on everything he does. So they've always got a LaMelo cam on. So he's itching to get back on the court, and SportsCenter and House of Highlights are itching for him to get back on the court too.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, LaMelo Ball, he is definitely box office, no doubt about it. But look at another guy who's, box office, putting highlight plays left and right. That's going to be Donovan Mitchell. But he, unfortunately, had a bad ankle injury, and he's going to be missing several games, perhaps, maybe the rest of the regular season. We really don't know how long he's going to be out for. There's no structural damage reported, though, which is good because it means that he avoided something that looked a lot worse than when he watched him, fall on that ankle against the Indiana Pacers. But Donovan Mitchell has been having the best season of his career, and the Jazz have had one of their best seasons in a while, averaging 26.5 points per game, a little over 5 assists, shooting 38% from 3. David, I remember back in the day we talked about, I think we had an all-NBA list about our all-NBA League Pass team or something. We were talking about some of our favorite players to watch. I think we both had Donovan Mitchell on that list. So start off with you here. How big of a loss is for Utah, and how's it going to affect them rest of the year?
Yeah, Donovan Mitchell, must-see TV. I think this is a tremendous loss for the Jazz. I'm really concerned about their chances now. I know they have a nice team around him. Rudy Gobert, back-to-back Defensive Player of the Year. Joe Ingles. Jordan Clarkson has been phenomenal this year. But if he's going to miss that much time, I just think the timing of this injury, with how much time is left in the regular season, you want to be playing your best basketball heading into the playoffs. And it's, this Jazz team, maybe it could be good for them if they really have to keep it together without Mitchell until he comes back before the playoffs come.
Yeah, David, I second that. And, the injury, it looked a lot worse than it ended up being. I remember him, having to be carried off the court. So it's good that it's not as serious as it looked. But this Jazz team, I will say they do have a lot of depth. They are built kind of to miss their star player because they do have so much depth. They have a lot of great bench scoring. They have a lot of good guards as well. With that being said, you can't just take the star off of a team and expect them to be the same team. And who knows how Mitchell's going to be when he gets back. Is that ankle injury going to nag him for the rest of the season? We saw Steph Curry early in his career struggle with ankle injuries that seemed to never subside earlier in his career. So sprained ankles are always tough. It'll be interesting to see how he is when he comes back and where the Jazz are as a team when he comes back.
Yeah, let's not forget, too, that Donovan Mitchell's only in his 4th season. It's crazy to think that he's this good and this young. But so he is the future of this Jazz team. Again, he is an all-star, could be all-NBA this year. But, yeah, you definitely got to sit it. I don't know. Matt, you think Rudy Gobert's going to be able to hold down the fort? Are we expecting some 30-piece games from him? Or do you think that's probably not going to happen?
Bro, Rudy Gobert can't even get 12 points a game. Rudy Gobert just stands there under the basket, waits for somebody to toss him the basketball so he can put it down like that. He doesn't do anything. He's not going to be much of an offensive prowess, whether Donovan Mitchell's in the lineup or not.
I think Shaq recently, he said something pretty mean about Rudy Gobert. He's like, that man, if you could just get 7 points a game, you can get paid $120 million or something in the NBA. And hey, Rudy Gobert contributes definitely, but Matt is definitely right on that. You have to feed him in the perfect position at the perfect time for him to be effective on offense, to me.
Yeah, Matt hates centers that can't really score the basketball very much. Him and Al Horford, they go way back, and Gobert as well. So, had to set him up there. But let's talk about a big man who definitely can put the ball in the basket. I think he's more than just a, dump it in the post and, he can actually create his own shot. That's Zion Williamson. He just got a new signature shoe. The Zion 1s were revealed, and he's going to be debuting them in these coming games as well. And it's the Jordan Brand's first Gen Z athlete. I guess, we're past the millennials. We're all Gen Z at this point, I guess. But what do you think about the shoes? They're pretty fresh, I thought.
I disagree, Hunter. I thought those
Really?
I thought they were oogly boogly, bro. I didn't like them at all. Yeah, I didn't like them at all. I didn't think they were that nice. Especially for a signature shoe, your first one. I feel like Jordan could have done better with those. I'm not a big sneakerhead. I'm not a big shoe guy. I know Hunter's a huge shoe guy. I don't know how you are, David, but I'm not a big sneakerhead. But to me, those weren't as fresh.
I'm kind of a shoe guy. I come and go with it. I have a few pairs of Jordans, but I saw a picture of the new Zions right before the podcast. I like them, but I want to get a second look at them. But I so far I like them. They remind me of a year or two ago. I think the KD 12s, except a little chunkier. So I don't know. I might look into them.
Yeah, those shoes might be made of titanium or something, so his freaking foot doesn't blow through them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I'm sure those things are really durable. They're Zion proof, so that's good. But anyways, though, let's talk about maybe one of the funniest players in the NBA, Anthony Edwards. Obviously, we talked about him last week because you didn't know who Alex Rodriguez was. But he doubled down with the baseball thing because apparently he was a great baseball player growing up, but didn't know who one of the best baseball players of this generation was at all, and one of the most famous ones. But he said he could throw 100 miles per hour if you gave him a month to train for it. Do you buy that? I mean, Matt, I know you played some baseball growing up, right?
Yeah.
Do you think Anthony Edwards could throw a heater like that?
Do you know how hard it is to throw 100 miles an hour? Do you know how hard it is to throw 90 miles an hour? I'm sure this dude was a great athlete, but he seems a little bit frail, a little bit skinny to be throwing 100 miles an hour. He'd just be up there saying whatever comes to his mind. He's that kid at recess that won't stop talking about how good he is at everything. That you just want to give him the Mike Tyson 1-2 because it doesn't shut up. But he's definitely a freak athlete. He's really good. But I don't know if he could throw 100 miles an hour. That's pretty crazy.
I am here for every one of Anthony Edwards' funny comments. I think it's hilarious. To answer the question, I don't think he can reach 100 miles an hour on a pitch. Absolutely not. I'd give him 85 for sure. I don't know about 90 if he trained for it for a little bit, but it would take him years to get even up to 90, 95. He's crazy.
Yeah, maybe he pulls a Michael Jordan and quits basketball for a little bit and plays some baseball. That's the only way we're really going to know. So I guess Anthony Edwards can say whatever he wants. We can't fact check it or anything like that. I don't know if you guys saw this too, but he's being interviewed about how he didn't know A-Rod and stuff. And he was like, yeah, but I know he's with J-Lo. And he's like, they're not anymore, right? He's like, really? He's like, that sucks. He's like, why is that? He's like, because she's J-Lo. They're perfect for each other. I'm like, you don't even know who Alex Rodriguez is. I mean, how can you say that?
To be fair, he did lose a lot in losing J-Lo, man. A-Rod was pretty down bad when he lost J-Lo. He was posting Instagram stories of will you remember me in the background? Some Coldplay playing in the background. Of him showing pictures of him and J-Lo. He was down bad last week, man.
Hey, he's on his Coldplay vibes. He was posting pics of all the family pics. I feel that it's J-Lo. What can you do,
Yeah, he lost the star player to his starting five. We just say that. Shout out Chris Paul one time. He quite literally passed Magic Johnson to become 5th all time in assists. That's pretty damn awesome for him. He's currently at 10,142 career assists in the NBA. If he keeps up his current pace, he's averaging 8.7 assists per game in 22 games, which would carry over into early next season. He can pass both Mark Jackson and Steve Nash, who are quite literally 1 assist between each other on the list, which is pretty wild to think. But Chris Paul can come up to 3rd. Maybe if you play a little longer, can get even past Jason Kidd for 2nd. John Stockton has over 15,000 career assists. God only knows how. But I guess every single pass he made, the guy made the shot. I have no idea. But anyways, though, Chris Paul, Matt, I'll turn to you here first. Obviously, a great accomplishment. But how high do you think he can climb on this list?
I think he can climb pretty high. I think Chris Paul has plans on playing for a little while more. And obviously, I thought his age would start to catch up to him here in the last couple of years, but it really has not. He's continued to ball out. He's continued to be really, really efficient. I think he can get there for sure. I think in terms of passing Mark Jackson, Steve Nash, it's not a matter of if he does it, it's a matter of when he does it. I think he knows where he is on the leaderboard. I think he'll try to pass him this year. And it's interesting. Do they not count playoff stats for that? Like, do they only do regular season assists?
It's regular
That's
season.
stupid. I hate that. I hate they don't count like what like I feel like playoff assists like playoff stats count more. Like why wouldn't they count that?
What's your thoughts
I
on
know, I agree. I think playoff stats should almost count for double because like they matter, you know. But I'm looking at the all-time assist list here. Chris Paul, he is less than 200 assists behind both Mark Jackson and Steve Nash. So if he passes both of them, that would put him in third. But he would then be almost 2,000 assists behind Jason Kidd and 4,000 behind John Stockton. So I think he could get to third. But also LeBron James is in the mix too. So, you know.
David, I'm just curious, where is he at since you have that list pulled up?
LeBron is at number 8 right now. He's right behind Oscar Robertson and Magic Johnson and then Chris Paul.
Okay. Yeah, I guess LeBron could potentially climb up that list too. I mean, the fact that he's a forward and is that high on the list, of course, is impressive. I'm assuming he's the highest forward on that list because all those other guys are more traditional point guards. But yeah, I mean, Chris Paul's a dog. I feel like he's a guy who has proven that you don't have to have a championship to prove that you're a winner because he is a winning basketball player. Everywhere he goes, the team gets significantly better. And then when he leaves, it gets significantly worse. So that just shows you the impact of Chris Paul on the court. Obviously, he puts up great stats, but I don't think that speaks to the whole story of him either.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think he's one of the most underappreciated kind of guys of this generation because he doesn't have that championship, like you said, Hunter. But you could also look at, where these teams were before they had Chris Paul and where they were when he was there and then where they were after he left, like you said. He's an impactful basketball player for sure, one of the most impactful of this generation, regardless of whether he has a championship or not.
Yeah, it's a shame he hasn't been able to capture that championship yet. That doesn't mean he still can't win one, but one of the greatest players of this generation, like you said. I think people who actually watch basketball understand his impact on winning.
Yeah, and we're seeing it with Phoenix this year. And who knows? I mean, Jason Kidd won one really late in his career. Maybe Chris Paul can follow suit. Anyways, though, moving on to a guy who did win a whole lot of championships, Scottie Pippen, unfortunately lost his oldest son, Antoine Pippen, to just 33 years of age. He released the news just a couple of days ago, on Monday, I want to say. But that being said, did not give the reason as to why Antoine passed, and which is totally fine. I haven't seen anything since. And he doesn't have to give that information, but it was his oldest son. He has 8 kids, which is a lot, but Scottie Pippen talked about how him and his son Antoine in particular really bonded over the game of basketball. He said really nice things saying, "Rest easy until we meet again." And I'm sure as a parent, losing your child before you pass is probably a very difficult thing. And I can't even understand that pain. But anyways, though, Antoine was a baller himself. Apparently, Scottie said that if he didn't have asthma, he thinks he can even go to the league because, of course, it's a lot harder to breathe when you have asthma. But still played some collegiate ball, both at South Georgia Technical College and Texas A&M Emmett National. But obviously, of course, we hate seeing deaths in the NBA community here. So shout out to Antoine one time.
Yeah, it's a shame. I mean, like you said, Hunter, to have a parent bury their child, it's something that should never have to happen, especially 33 years old, so young. I did kind of see something that it was speculated that it was probably his asthma condition that probably had something to do with his death, which is a shame. And I was thinking the same thing that you said, where Scottie Pippen mentioned that in his tweet announcing the death of his son, saying if it wasn't for this asthma condition, he thinks he could have gone to the NBA easily. So I mean that just shows the kind of bond that they had.
Yeah, guys, I cannot imagine going through that, either as a parent or as a child, having that happen. Whatever the reason, thoughts and prayers out to the Pippen family. It's a real shame. 33 years old is just way too young. So, my thoughts are with the Pippen family.
Yeah, absolutely. Oldest son, too. You hate to see it. But anyways, though, looking at NBA free agency, it's going to begin on August 2nd, but it'll begin earlier because we know tampering's a thing. And then the signing period is going to be August 6th. There are some notable free agents like Kawhi Leonard, who has a player option. Chris Paul, I believe, also has a player option, but I believe both those guys will be staying with their teams. But then guys like DeMar DeRozan will be hitting the market as well. A little bit later of a start, but do you think that's going to affect the start of the regular season at all? Or do you think we're going to be able to start on time like we normally do in October?
I think they're going to push ahead to try to start the season at a normal pace because I think they just want to kind of get back to a normal schedule, whether it's in mid-October or late October. I think they're going to try and push ahead. I don't think the free agency will have anything to do with when the season starts, just because this past season we saw free agency be in like end of November, and then the season started like a month later. Training camp was like a week after free agency started. So I think it won't have that much of effect on the start of the season. But this free agent class is kind of weak, to be honest. If DeMar DeRozan is the headline player, that's a weak class. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, I saw the list of the free agents. I do think it's a weak class. I think DeRozan is an excellent pickup for a lot of teams if he does leave the Spurs. But are we ending this regular season at a normal time? Is that why the season is shorter? To finish up before the Olympics. It normally, the regular season normally ends in April, right? Or May.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's interesting too, because the season actually is ending a little later. The NBA draft is also going to be in July. So things are still a little pushed back despite the fact that there's less games this year and it started in December. But I do, like Matt said, I think that the regular season will probably start on time, that typical mid-late October time. To try to get back to normalcy during the pandemic and stuff like that. But anyway,
yeah, I think it. Yeah.
Yep. But yep. So we'll be excited to see NBA free agency. I know it's three of us here trying to gain that chemistry. You know what it is. But let's look at Brad Stevens here. Got offered the IU job. Now he is an Indiana native, being Indiana University. $70 million. They fired Archie Miller because he couldn't get the job done after coming from a successful Dayton program. But turns down that job. I just want to know, Brad Stevens, even though he's been in the league for quite some time, still one of the younger coaches, do you think he's a Celtic for life, or could you eventually see him moving on the greener pastures?
Yeah, I think he eventually will leave Boston. I don't know if that's now or at some point in the future. But honestly, with the way this season has gone, I wouldn't be totally shocked if he ends up leaving after the playoffs for Indiana University. I know he shot it down. I know, this whole rumor came out because he shot it down. But he's been linked to Indiana pretty much since Archie Miller was fired. He is an Indiana native. And if you're an Indiana native, you know how important basketball is in that community. But not only basketball, but college basketball. Indiana University basketball is so important to that state. And, being from that area, he knows exactly what it's like. He knows that's probably his dream job. I would not be totally shocked if he ends up in Indiana. I don't know whether that be this year or down the road. I wouldn't be totally shocked.
Yeah, what's your thoughts on that, David?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure where he's at in his Boston contract, how much he has left and how much they're paying him. But if he's from Indiana, and anyone who's ever seen the movie Hoosiers knows how serious the basketball is there. I also wouldn't be surprised, especially with an offer like that. It'll be interesting to see because, it makes you wonder who Boston would look to hire or replace him with if he does leave.
Yeah, I believe based on what I'm looking at right now, he's on 6 years, $22 million. So Indiana was loading the bag on him. So I wonder if Brad Stevens is going to get an even bigger offer. If anything, this is at least leverage for him. It's tough. I mean, you guys bring up Austin Points, one Hoosiers, great movie, but I don't know. I don't know if he would leave to go to Indiana. I mean, he did coach at Butler, so he does have the college experience and very successful in that state. But oh man, I mean, he's got pretty lined up nice with the Celtics. So he's got Tatum, he's got Jaylen Brown, he's got Kemba there. I don't know.
I think it depends more on what he's kind of looking for at this point in his career. Does he want to get back to his college roots where he could have more control over the entire program? Whereas with the Celtics, it seems as though he probably has some input on what the team itself looks like, but he's really just the coach of that team. He doesn't have much input in what kind of moves are made, where they go in free agency, all that kind of stuff. At Indiana, obviously in college, he has the final say in everything.
Yeah, Brad Stevens, one of the best young coaches in the NBA. I'm sure that's not the only offer he's ever received recently. So again, it'll be really interesting to see where he goes. I'm curious, or not where he goes, but what the Celtics will do if he decides to leave. There's a number of candidates out there, and you know how that Boston market is with the fans, and if they lose one game because someone missed a shot that went in and out at the buzzer, they're like, Brad Stevens, what are you doing? But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, Brad Stevens is a phenomenal head coach. I don't think he gets fired or anything like that anytime soon, even after a couple bad seasons, both the year before last year and then this year as well. But he's got one of the most secure seats in the league. I don't think his seat's going to get hot anytime soon. But, episode 45 here on Ball Don't Lie. It's going to be our second to last episode before the year ends, most likely. So, David, since you are the co-founder here, give the people what they want. What is the motto here on Ball Don't Lie?
Oh, the motto here is no team gets left behind. Everyone should know that by now. No team gets left behind.
Not one. No former co-founder or podcast host gets left behind either. Moving on to our players of the week. Typically, me and Matt give 3 each. But since David's here and we don't want to make this too long, we're just going to give 2 each. So, Matt, I'll let you go first. Who made the list for you?
Well, me and David are both Sixers fans, so he knows which direction I'm going here. I'm going to go Joel Embiid. He is making the MVP race a serious conversation again. It was Jokic's award to lose, but with the way Embiid has come back and continued to dominate, this race might be a lot closer than people think, even though he had to miss a chunk of games. In his last 4 games, Embiid is averaging nearly 35 points per game while continuing to be extremely efficient from the field as well as from the charity stripe. Regardless of who wins MVP, we need to appreciate the kind of season Joel is having in an era where the big man has kind of become phased out.
Matt or Hunter, I agree with Matt on this one. Joel Embiid is right there as my number 1 player of the week. I do have a number 2, but Embiid is my number 1. Those numbers speak for themselves, and I think it's just really incredible and an improvement with Embiid that he had that injury. It was a scary, that hyperextended knee. It did not look good when it happened, and he came back, and it's like he didn't miss a beat. He's been playing at that really high level, top MVP levels since he came back, and he's the Sixers are in first place because of him.
I should have known you both. We're gonna have Joel Embiid on this list. How could you not? I guess really just double teaming me here right now. But anyways, I do have a former Sixer. I know this guy holds a special place in Matt's heart on my list. That's going to be, of course, Landry Shamet of the Brooklyn Nets. James Harden is currently out right now, but Landry Shamet doing his thing, averaging over 22 points per game and 4 assists on some ridiculous shooting numbers, 58.5% from the field, 53.3% from 3, and 80% from the foul line. Now, Landry Shamet may not be James Harden. He may not be Kyrie Irving, but damn it, he's going to get his shots up because those guys leave a lot on the table when they're not playing. Maybe Landry Shamet could be, temporarily part of the big 3 until Harden comes back.
Hey, man, Landry Shamet is the truth, man. I've been trying to tell everybody Landry Shamet could shoot the lights out. I loved him when he played for the Sixers. I was upset that the Sixers did have to trade him in order to get Tobias Harris. But Landry Shamet is a fantastic player. He's been kind of slept on. He's been inconsistent at times, but he can shoot the 3-ball, man. He's a good player.
I'm a big Landry Shamet fan. When he left Philly for the Clippers, that was a bad day for me. And I love Landry Shamet. I hope one day he returns to one of my teams. I think he's a phenomenal 2-way player. And no one wanted to see Wichita State when he was there. That's for sure.
Yeah, David. What was I gonna say? Two-way player? Really?
Well, it's a loose definition.
Yeah. I'm just saying. Anyways, though.
I appreciate you calling me out.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to call you out on that one time. I don't know about that. But then moving on here, we each gave 1 player. Matt, I'll let you go again here. Who else rounds out the list?
Well, it's going to be Steph Curry. I can't believe neither of you have mentioned him yet. If Curry isn't on a player of the week list this week, then there is no player of the week list. Curry is quite literally the textbook definition of a walking bucket right now. Watching the game on Monday night, like I talked about against the Sixers, everything he chucked up, I would find myself saying, no way that goes in. And then it did go in. If this team he was on, the Warriors, was anywhere near competitive, he would be the easy pick for MVP this season. And he might have even thrust himself firmly into the conversation. I mean, the man is averaging 45 points per game over the past week. That's just stupid.
I apologize, man. I was looking at the standings. Which player were you were talking Steph Curry?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to put Steph Curry too, but since we keep all picking the same players, I have to go with Nikola Jokic this week as my other one. He's been phenomenal. And with Jamal Murray out now, I think Denver, they're in trouble without Jamal Murray, but thank goodness they have the Joker. You know, he holds everything together, and being one of the best passing big men I've ever seen in my entire life, maybe the best. You know, it sort of fills that void at the guard position a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, he is a phenomenal passer. I think the best passing big man I've ever seen. I'll double down on that, David. But yeah, both those guys have been phenomenal. 47 points too, double overtime victory, or not double. I think it was just regular overtime victory against the Grizzlies. And short sample size, but they are 2-0 since Murray's been down. So maybe Denver can keep the ship afloat just a little bit. We'll see. Cards are definitely stacked against them. No pun intended. Next on my list, though, it's funny. The two guys on my player of the week list, I don't think are good basketball players at all, and I don't like their games, but I guess I'll just give him the credit. Josh Jackson for the Detroit Pistons, averaging 20 points per game, and also 4 rebounds per game as well, and a steal and a block per game, and shooting 43.5% from the field, 85% from the foul line. The Pistons have won 2 of their last 3 games. It might not be against good teams. I think their wins are against like the Cavs and the Thunder, I think, but they are beating the bottom feeders. And you know me, I like digging deep in my bag for this. I'm sorry. Carry on.
Josh Jackson, Hunter. Josh Jackson. I forgot this dude was even in the league.
Barely.
Wow. Oh, God, that's a disgusting name to bring up. Josh Jackson, I mean, how many teams has he been on? I didn't even know he was on the Pistons. Is it just like
He's
his
on, like, 14
last chance kind of?
Yeah,
Is this
it's
like
been
his last chance
for
kind of?
quite some time.
Yeah. Yeah, Josh Jackson stinks, man. I'm gonna say that up front. He's not good.
I'm with Matt on this one. Couldn't agree more. I didn't notice when the Suns got rid of him, and then one day I saw him on the Pistons, and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." And I haven't heard much about him since. So I don't know. Maybe he'll turn it around here, get something going, make a career.
You know, Josh Jackson is like, this is the team that's going to work out for. But anyways, no, I do like digging deep in my bag with these player of the weeks. I like throwing Matt off sometimes when I mention a player and he's like, huh?
Yeah, I gotta go through Basketball Reference just to find this guy. I gotta go look at his stats.
Yeah, I guess I picked 2 guys who've had underwhelming careers. But anyways, though, we're going to move on to guys who've had great seasons and great careers. That's going to be our top 5 MVP rankings lists here. I guess we can either count down or count up. We did not discuss this beforehand. What do you fellas want to do?
What do you mean?
We can either count up from 5 to 1 on our list, or we can go 1 to 5.
I was just gonna read my entire list and then go from there and then kind of explain it. But we
All
can
right,
do whatever.
Matt, you can take the spotlight then. Go ahead.
Okay. So 1A and 1B, there's not a 1 and 2. It's like it's so close right now. But 1A, I'm going to do it. I'm gonna put Joel Embiid. And Nikola Jokic, obviously 1B. I have Steph Curry in the 3rd spot, Giannis 4th, and Julius Randle 5th. Because in terms of most valuable player, I think of most valuable to their team. I think Julius Randle has been criminally underrated the entire year. I give Randle the edge over some other big name superstars. Where would the New York Knicks be without Julius Randle? I'll say that. And if I didn't have Curry and Embiid on my player of the week list, Randle was my backup. I did have Randle. He had a fantastic week this past week. Where would they be without him? But in terms of what everybody wants to know, the Embiid and Jokic debate, as I mentioned earlier, this race is so much tighter than it should be, considering how many less games Embiid has played than Jokic. I've said it all year. Jokic is fantastic offensively, but the other side of the court matters just as much. Not only is Embiid great defensively, he's an all-defensive team lock and would easily be first-team all-defense if it weren't for that stupid French baguette in Utah. So this takes nothing away from the season Jokic is having. Absolutely nothing. He's having a phenomenal year. But when you factor everything in, Embiid is the clear favorite if he doesn't miss 2 weeks, and he still might still end up winning the award. You know, his defense and rim protection are so much better than Jokic. He has dominant scoring, type of scoring to take over a game. Jokic kind of like that, but not really. And then Embiid controls the game by getting to the line, plays at his pace. Plays without a productive offensive point guard, I might add. Ben Simmons is great defensively, but offensively, David, you and I both know he is not that good. Hunter and I have talked about it as well. And literally does not get a single easy basket. He is constantly fighting through the paint, constantly fighting through guys, putting hands in his face, and he creates every shot he gets for himself. No one sets up shots for him. He creates everything he gets. I think he's the MVP.
Guys, Joel Embiid's number 1 on my list. And I might as well say the Joker is number 2 on my list, kind of like your 1A, 1B. I couldn't have said it better than you did about Embiid. Controls the game himself. And figured out a perfect way to play off of Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris, that whole lineup. And Hunter, I'm a giant Matisse Thybulle fan. I want him to get more involved in the offense because his defense alone keeps him in the game. He's phenomenal. 2-time Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. But Embiid's my number 1 MVP for obvious reasons. And then the Joker's number 2. And the Joker could get boosted up to number 1. Like I mentioned earlier with the Jamal Murray injury. He's just going to have to lift this team even more moving forward.
All right, so you guys going with Embiid and Jokic. Of course, it's been an interesting MVP race. It's crazy that there's no clear front runner right now. A lot of various opinions like that. David, is there any other guys you think that could maybe sneak in that race at all, or you think it's really just them two?
I think it's mainly between those two right now. I originally had a list of 3 instead of 5 because I think after Embiid and Joker, it's like 6 or 7 guys that you can arguably put right there. Literally this year, there's that many guys that you could have who are right there behind Embiid and Joker.
That's fair. So my top 5 list, someone who wasn't mentioned yet, but do want to give him the credit, Damian Lillard, having, maybe not the greatest last month of games, but if we're looking at overall season, he's been terrific. Could potentially be first team All NBA as a guard. The Blazers have had a very good season despite all the injuries. CJ McCollum missing games, Yusuf Nurkic missing games and things like that. Damian Lillard's been the one consistent guy on that team, and he's been hooping just like he normally does. Number 4 on my list is going to be Giannis. He's not going to win because the fact if he wins 3 straight MVPs, that's definitely something that the media doesn't want. They were fine with giving him 2, but they're not fine with giving him 3. But he's had a terrific year as well. Bucks are 3rd place in the Eastern Conference. Hi, Brooke. What's up? Podcast right now. Okay. Shout out Brooke Steak one time. I guess you want to say hi to the fans?
Oh my gosh, hello.
What's up, Brooke?
Podcast PSSN.
Yeah, promote it one time.
What's up?
Yeah.
Hey.
Best duo right here, Brooke. Right? Best duo and trio. What's up, Brooke? Yeah, you can.
But just wanted to shout out Matt real quick. Helped me with my project earlier today. Great interviewer. Sorry. But yeah, have fun with. I just saw my 2 favorite people in here. So.
All right.
Peace. Bottom line.
Right, actually, I'll ask you this: who do you think's MVP this year?
In the NBA.
Yeah.
So
yes.
I'm not really a big NBA fan. I mean, it's kind of like sad. Pittsburgh doesn't have an NBA team. I don't know, maybe Tristan Thompson. I know him from all the.
Oh, for the love of God!
That's really the only player I really
No, you've been stopped. Get out. Get out.
No, seriously, is he good? I want to know.
This might be the stop fight. I'm calling it right now. I think this is it.
He is trash. Get out of here.
I thought he was pretty good. Isn't he on the Cavs?
No. Oh, God.
This is why the ball lies. I'm gonna go. Peace.
All right, guys. Oh, you heard it here first. Tristan Thompson's gonna win. All right. Definitely, didn't plan that. I thought 3 people on the podcast would be a lot. Turns out we had 4. But anyways, though, Tristan Thompson won't be rounding out my top 3 here. 3rd on my list is gonna be Nikola. Nope, sorry. I have Joel Embiid on 3rd on my list. Unfortunately, it's really the games for me that he's missed a lot, but he could make up some ground. I will say he could make up some ground with the fact that the Nuggets could struggle and Joel Embiid and the Sixers, if he stays healthy, I will say that. This is currently right now. Number 2 on my list is going to be Nikola Jokic for the fact that he's played more games. I actually think he's a better player than Joel Embiid. I've said that before. Embiid, I want to see the Sixers prove it in the playoffs first before I can make that. And I can't believe I'm saying it because I wouldn't have said it last week or the week before, but Steph Curry is going to be number 1 on my list. And I'm sorry. I'm someone who likes reward winning. I don't feel great about giving people MVPs when they're not great in the standings. But if you look at most valuable player, what Steph Curry is doing right now is historic. I feel awful for this guy that he's on probably the worst team in the NBA if he was not on the team. And individually, he passed Bradley Beal in the scoring points per game department, like we talked about earlier in the podcast. The fact that he was able to climb up that list where I don't even think he was in like the top 5 during this run is absolutely phenomenal. And look, the Warriors suck. And that's why I have my reservations doing it. I know it's bold, but I got to give it to Steph Curry. I think he's been the best player in the league this year, the most valuable player in the league. And I got to give the man his flowers when it's due.
Yeah, I can respect that, Hunter. I can totally respect putting Steph Curry number 1. But the reason I had him at 3 on my list is because of something you talked about is the team is just not that good, and they usually do reward winning along with great individual performances. But if I did it kind of based off of like what I think the media is going to do as well as what I think. But in terms of most valuable, Hunter, you hit it right on the head. I mean, where would this Warriors team be without Steph Curry? They would be what they were last year, winning 10 games. I mean, this is not a good roster around him, and he's literally willing them to win this past week. He has been fantastic. But Hunter, what I will say about Joel Embiid is the Sixers are 30-8 when Joel Embiid is in the lineup. 30-8.
He's a great player. I don't hate Embiid. I think he's a phenomenal.
He's better than Jokic. Say he's better than Jokic.
I don't think so. He's got to prove it first.
Disappointing, Hunter.
Do it in the playoffs.
I'm not going to comment on that one yet, but Steph Curry, I will comment on that. He's been phenomenal this year. So I told you guys number 1 on my list was Embiid. 2 was Nikola Jokic. I have Curry at number 5 since you guys brought him up, only because of their record. Otherwise, he would be much higher. But I'll go back. So number 3 on my list is Chris Paul because of just what the Suns had to do last year. They literally went undefeated in the bubble and still didn't make the playoffs. Chris Paul comes this year. What are they now? The 2 seed?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. His impact on winning is huge. I know he doesn't have the visual statistics that are 30-point triple doubles and stuff like that, but it doesn't matter, honestly. So I have Chris Paul at number 3 on my list, and then number 4, I know they're not going to give him a 3rd one in a row, but I have Giannis on that list because where would the Bucks be without him? And his numbers this year are just silly. This time I'm right. He's a phenomenal 2-way player on that one. And he just does everything. So they're not going to give him a 3rd one in a row, but I have to have Giannis on my list.
That's fair. I mean, I think all 3 of us had Giannis. I think at 4.
At 4. All 3 of us had him there.
4 like Jay-Z out here. But yeah, Chris Paul though, that's interesting at 3. The only thing with me is I love me some Chris Paul. We definitely promote him on the podcast here. But man, I mean, I still think Devin Booker's their best player though, and that's my reservation because Devin Booker's a problem. D-Book can get you a bucket, and he's definitely taken some huge strides this year too. And Chris Paul even said himself, I came to Phoenix because I wanted to play with him.
I agree with you, Hunter. I totally can agree with that. I do think Devin Booker's the best player on the team. I'm just really excited about how Chris Paul has impacted this team. I might have Chris Paul a little too high, but I mentioned earlier, I had 6 or 7 guys I was choosing between for this 3, 4, 5 slots on the list. I'll just mention a few names. James Harden was on the list. I think Jimmy Butler coming back for the Heat after they were in the doghouse and helping them come back. James Harden, and then there was a few others, but and LeBron James, of course, and Kawhi Leonard has quietly been playing really great too. So there's a lot of guys.
Yeah, we talked about that too last week, how Kawhi Leonard's been absolutely balling, Matt. You remember that?
Mm-hmm. Kawhi Leonard and even James Harden. I mean, we were talking about James Harden quite a bit last week too. And he would, probably be the first player in NBA history to ever get traded midseason and win an MVP award. But unfortunately, I do think him having that hamstring injury now really, really hurts his chances down the stretch here in terms of winning that award. Doesn't change the fact that he's going to have a great postseason, the fact that he's a fantastic player, obviously, as a great fit for that Brooklyn Nets team.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more with you, Matt. Yeah, I think he probably gets knocked out of the conversation just with that. And again, I think that having Kyrie and KD there, it's a little hard to give an MVP when you got quite literally sometimes three of them on the court at the same time. Though it hasn't happened very often. But we don't rarely have guests on the podcast, if at all. But we have three here today. David Green, you are always been welcome to come back. It was crazy how we, came up with this idea entering my junior year, your senior year, to do this podcast. 45 episodes in, didn't even know Matt. And then, once you left, I was lost. I couldn't find another co-host. And then Matt joined Penn State Sports Night and filled right in the shoes. So David, shout out to you. Like Brooke Stake said, best podcast in Penn State Sports Night. Hopefully wins that award this year. And we definitely always appreciate you having you on the pod, David. Any words you want to tell the people?
Fellas, I appreciate you so much for having me. Matt, you are the best replacement for me possible. Wouldn't want anyone else. You guys are the best duo on the pod I've seen. Penn State is really going to miss you guys. So I really, I know you're blushing, Hunter. I really appreciate you guys having me on. 45 episodes. That is really impressive. Congratulations, guys.
Yep. And it's crazy too that we're going to be joining you soon in that retirement home, David. Just in a couple weeks, me and Matt will be graduating. I don't know what we'll do from there. Maybe there'll be a new podcast in Penn State Sports Night that's new and improved talking about hoops. We'll see.
Yeah, the retirement plan. That's what we would be.
Yeah, invest in that 401k, AARP.
Hey guys, well, again, thank you so much for having me. All right, have a great rest of the pod. You got 2 more segments left, so knock them out of the park or dunk them or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, we'll cross sports a little bit one time. But yep, David, appreciate having you on as always.
All right, guys.
Thanks for joining us, David.
See ya.
Anyways, though, and then there were 2, just me and Matt. We're gonna be talking about some overachieving teams that are playing a little better than we thought recently, and some teams that have been playing a little bad. Last time we did this, we talked about the coaches' corner. Me and Matt went 2 for 2 on our picks, but we'll see if we do it again, Matt. But I guess you can start with either one. Go for it.
I'll start with overachieving. I'm going to go with the Atlanta Hawks. This felt like an easy team to pick. They've played really well since firing Lloyd Pierce, as we've talked about. Don't get me wrong, they deserve a ton of credit for that. And they've really improved their defense this year, which was a huge talking point for us at the beginning of the season, Hunter, because we had our doubts with this team defensively. But come on, this team is not the 4th best team in the Eastern Conference like they are right now. No way, no how. I think the Celtics and Heat are far better teams than Atlanta. And even the Knicks are better than the Hawks, in my opinion. I would be flabbergasted if this team won a playoff series, and I'd even be shocked if they won more than 1 game in the playoffs, honestly. Depending on who they match up with, I don't think they'll end up as the 4 or 5 seed, and if that's the case, they end up a 6th seed or in the play-in tournament, they're going to play probably the 3 best teams in the Eastern Conference far and away. I don't think they would get a game off any of them.
It's a good point. I definitely don't disagree with you on that take. That's not who I had on my list, but I definitely do agree. I think they have definitely overachieved. But they are winning games, I guess. So yeah, I don't think they win a playoff series at all. And if they stay at the 4 or 5, they might get bounced by the Heat or the Knicks or any of those teams. But I'm going to go with a team that I do think has overachieved a little bit recently. They were on a 6-game win streak, but it was snapped. Boston Celtics. I know that they've been playing really well recently, and this might be a hot take, but I really don't think they're all that good. Jason Tatum has been awesome. Jaylen Brown's been awesome. Kemba Walker, he had that game-clinching shot the other night as well. But I just don't like this team. They have Tristan Thompson on it, and unlike Brooks' opinion, he's not that good. He's not really holding down the fort in the paint at all. So it's a really soft team down low. And then I know we've complained about Daniel Tice on his podcast, but he was one of the only other centers they had, and he's now gone. So I don't know where this is coming from. Evan Fournier has been not very good. And I am not a big fan of the Celtics this year. Not just saying that because I'm a Laker fan. Matt, if you agree with me or not, I don't think you would just be saying that because you're a Sixer fan. This is a team that I think also is going to get bounced. I don't think they win a playoff series.
Yeah, I think this team has really regressed over the past year even. Kemba Walker has not been the same player. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been awesome, like you said, but Tatum has had to adjust since getting COVID. He's said that publicly that he's had to adjust. I mean, this team, quite honestly, down low, their 4 and 5 positions are terrible. I mean, they're actually terrible, and they can't guard. They can't offer anything offensively. They can't offer anything defensively down low. This team is not good, and they're going to match up with some really good big men in the first round. No matter who they play, they're going to match up with a good big man, whether it be Bam Adebayo, Clint Capella. If they get screwed and have to play the Bucks, play Giannis, if they have to play the Nets, who's going to guard who? And if they have to play the Sixers for some reason, who's going to guard Joel Embiid? They haven't been able to do it all year. The Sixers swept the Celtics. This Celtics team, like you said, Hunter, they'll beat up on the bad teams, but when you get to the cream of the crop, they're not part of that. They're going to get beat up in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing Jason Tatum at the 4, and I feel like he's really more of a 3 because they have to. They literally don't have a choice because they're so thin down low. This is a team that has heavily disappointed this year. I think been one of the most disappointing teams. I'm not going to buy into this 6-game win streak that was snapped, but because I just don't see it with this team.
Yeah, another thing I will say about this Celtics team, in the past, especially with Brad Stevens coach teams, the one thing the Celtics have always had is depth, and this team does not have that. Their bench is poor. It is not good at all. If Peyton Pritchard's probably your best scorer off the bench, you don't have a good bench. So this team, the depth is not there. They've been inconsistent all year. They've had a lot of injuries. They've had a lot of issues, with COVID, obviously, like I said, with Jason Tatum. But this team, their team's not good. The depth is not good. They're past their prime.
Yeah, they'd be shopping at the Dollar Tree. They should be shopping at Barney's to get some better players on that team. But give us an underachieving team, a team that maybe has not played as well as they should be, but maybe they can pick it up, maybe they don't. But yeah, I guess the talent just doesn't add up to the wins.
Well, I guess this would be for David Green then, the Miami Heat. They got off to a horrible start and have rebounded to get back over 500, and then they lost like 7 games in a row, and now they're back over 500 again after beating the Nets and Rockets in back-to-back games this weekend. This team has been the textbook definition of inconsistency all year. With that being said, I think they're starting to hit their stride a little bit here as the regular season is winding down, which is the perfect time to get hot. I've said it all year. I would not want to face Eric Spoelstra or Jimmy Butler in the playoffs, regardless of where this team is in the standings. This team is built for the postseason, and we saw that last year.
Yeah, and even guys like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson have been very up and down this year. They've not been as good as they were in the bubble. But maybe, like we always talk about, Matt, some guys just rise up in the occasion in the playoffs and play better in those moments, and those guys have proven that. So maybe they do improve. I am a Miami Heat believer. This is just a team that I feel like is built more for the playoffs than the regular season. I think it'll show just like it did in the bubble.
Absolutely, and that's why I think they're gonna. I think if they get matched up as in the 4 or 5 region, I think that's an easy win for the Heat. I think they can get to a 4 or 5 seed too, especially with how inconsistent the bottom 6 teams in the Eastern Conference are. I think they could turn it around and get to the 4 or 5 spot, and then they would, if they play the Sixers or Nets in the second round, I think they give them a really, really tough matchup.
Who knows? Maybe they can beat the Bucks if they get the 6, or maybe honestly, if the Nets really struggle and they can't really find the chemistry like the Heat have, who knows? You never know, man. I think the Heat, there's a scary team, like you said. No one wants to face them. But good thing is we didn't have repeating teams on both of our lists. The team that I think is underachieving right now is the Chicago Bulls. They just traded for Nikola Vucevic. We both credited. We both liked that move. We thought it was a great move. We liked them being aggressive, trying to surround Zach LaVine with some talent there. But here's a fun fact: the Magic, since trading Nikola Vucevic, are 3-11. The Bulls are 5-9. They're not that much better than the Magic were ever since they got that move. They are currently at 24-33 overall. That is good enough for 10th in the Eastern Conference. The teams behind them, the Wizards, are on a 5-game win streak. Don't look now. And the Raptors are on a 3-game win streak. And they are literally just got fined money for purposely tanking games. And they might pass the Bulls, who just made a big boy move to get Nikola Vucevic. Zach LaVine had 50 points in the game, Matt, against the Hawks and lost. How is that even possible? This Bulls team has been pathetic. If they make the playoffs or make the play-in tournament, it will be a pity party. I get it might be a bit of a, adjustment, but Vucevic's been putting up pretty good numbers, about what he was putting up in Orlando. So he's been playing fine, but this team's still losing. I don't get it.
I think the biggest problem with this team, Hunter, is LaVine and Vucevic are the clear 1-2. They've been balling out. They've been doing their part. But outside of that, who is helping this team? Who's playing good offense outside of them? Who's playing good defense on that team? That's what I want to know.
No one's playing good defense on that team.
That team is consistently giving up 120-plus points a game. They're like the Brooklyn Nets from January. They are giving up so many points. This team is good on paper offensively. I think once you get an offseason together with this team, a non-COVID offseason maybe, and maybe make another couple moves in free agency. They have the money to do it, make another couple moves via trades. I think Billy Donovan is a good coach for that system. I think he's a good coach there. I just think they need more help, and I think they need more help defensively as well, which unfortunately Billy Donovan has not been known for. So I don't know where this team goes from here, honestly. If they can't get this ship turned around and right together, I don't know where this team goes.
Yeah, I agree. It is really confusing to see how this team has struggled as much as they have. But last but not least, we always give our All NBA teams. We give our All NBA unpopular opinions teams. Me and Matt each came up with some either players or things like that we personally agree with, but maybe not everybody else does. So Matt, I'll let you go first. It'll be pretty funny if we have any agreements here.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we will, but I'll start with my biggest one. LeBron's 4-6 NBA Finals record should not be used against him. If anything, it's impressive. So hang with me here. Let me explain this. On the surface, 6 finals losses is obviously a lot. And since everybody loves to compare him to Michael Jordan, I get the whole Jordan never lost an NBA Finals thing. But with that being said, Jordan never really had to play the teams LeBron played and with as little help as LeBron had in some of these finals. So his first loss in 2007, he was 23 years old. He lost to the machine that was the San Antonio Spurs, and his best supporting player was Mo Williams or Elgauskas or Anderson Varejao. 2011 is really the only year you could put blame on him for losing a series. He was famously bad in that series, his first one with Miami. Then he won 2. And then 2014 was kind of the beginning of LeBron getting no help from his teammates as he scored 28 points per game in that series, but again lost to the San Antonio Spurs and only won 1 game in that series. 2015 with the Cavs, he was arguably the MVP of that series, even though they lost, because his numbers were absurd and he was playing without Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. Kevin Love got hurt in the start of the playoffs. Kyrie Irving got hurt in game 1 of that game that I think went to overtime. And they ended up losing. LeBron averaged 36 points per game in that series, with his best supporting cast player being Matthew Dellavedova and Timothy Mozgov, and somehow got that squad to win 2 games without Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love. And then in 17 and 18, he was going up against a literal God squad, and he still put up great numbers. He was phenomenal in those series. So if you're going to look at LeBron James and be like, oh, he's 4-6 in the finals, how could he be the best player of all time? You got to know the whole story, and I think the whole story shows a lot more. I think LeBron personally has played fantastic in pretty much every finals he's been in, except for maybe that 2011 series. But even if you look at that 2011 team, that Heat team wasn't getting there without LeBron. So that's my 2 cents about that.
And put it this way too, like he's gone there 10 times. Like he's gone there more times than he even has played in the, like it's more than 50% of the times he's been in the NBA. What is his 18th season?
Mm-hmm.
He's been in the NBA Finals, which is wild. And it was like a period of time too, because he didn't get there till 2007, where he went up against, one of the best Spurs teams that Spurs dynasty's had, and we knew they were going to get smoked. And then he went from 4 straight with the Heat, 4 straight with the Cavs, the off year with the Lakers, and then got back again. So that is 9 and 10 years. That's wild. The mental fatigue that takes, even Jordan had to retire, in order to kind of get his swing back. That's not the case with LeBron James. And like you said, had to go up against some dynasty teams like the Warriors and the Spurs. I am totally on you with that. I feel like people saying that are just LeBron haters. I can definitely get behind that, although it didn't make my list. A little bow. Okay, one time. Next on my list, you can call me a homer, maybe. I get it, but I've been saying it for a while. I think Anthony Davis is a better player than Giannis Antetokounmpo. I really do. And I think from a skill perspective, Anthony Davis is a better shooter. He has better post moves, arguably a better ball handler in the half court, and better free throw shooter, more versatile player. I think a better defensive player. Maybe Giannis is a little better on the perimeter, but if we're talking about down low, I'm taking AD all day, every day. And he has a championship. I get it. Giannis does not play with LeBron James, but you talk about a guy who fits seamlessly with the Lakers and LeBron James, because a lot of those star players, it takes them a while to adjust to that. He fit right away. I think he can play with anybody. I get, he wasn't maybe as successful with the Pelicans in terms of the playoff success as the Bucks, but is there really much of a difference? Because I think that those teams were worse. They weren't as well head coached, and he still swept the Portland Trailblazers the last time he had a full healthy season with them. So Giannis has the MVPs. I get it. Maybe has a little more accolades outside of Anthony Davis' championship. But everyone was like, all right, AD, it's time for you to perform. Go out there and do your thing in the playoffs. And he dominated. And Giannis shies away in those moments. Anthony Davis thrives. I don't really care. I'll let the bling speak for itself. I think Anthony Davis is a better basketball player than Giannis.
I could totally buy into this, Hunter. I mean, I have been on record in saying that I'm not the biggest fan of Giannis's game. I think he misses too many shots. I think most of his points come too close to the basket. I think Anthony Davis is a far more versatile player athletically. Defensively, I think they're very similar. I think they're both great first-team all-defensive players, no doubt. I can definitely buy into this, Hunter. I definitely can. Giannis, I have been on record with calling out his defense, too. You know, he won Defensive Player of the Year, but wouldn't guard the best player in that Miami Heat series, which was Jimmy Butler last year. So, and that's not the case with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis consistently takes on the best big men in the league, and he's a very versatile player, and he's far more talented offensively. I can totally buy into that, Hunter.
All right. Yeah, it seems like we're both checking the boxes so far, and they're all very Laker related, but so that makes me happy. But Matt, what else is on your list?
This is another huge one for me. It's a very pet peeve of me, but I think local broadcasts are 10,000 times better than national broadcasts. Yes, I still love Mike Breen. Also, I don't know if this is necessarily true for every market, but I think especially in Philly and the big markets and even a lot of the smaller markets like Charlotte, the local broadcasts are just a lot better than the national broadcasts. They feel more genuine to me. I don't know. The local guys add more personality. It's fun to see them get riled up and be more excited for their team that they're broadcasting for. Also, the TNT announcers are horrid, and they should do a clean sweep of every single last one of their announcers, except for Kevin Harlan. I like him. The rest of them are hot garbage. Do not even get me started on Chris Webber and Reggie Miller. They are both terrible analysts. And for ESPN, I think every one of their broadcast teams, outside of their A team, which is Mike Breen, Doris Burke, Van Gundy, and Mark Jackson, and friend of the podcast, Ryan Rucco, every single one of those last ones, they all stink outside of those guys. How the hell is ESPN still putting Hubie Brown on national television? How? I mean, it frustrates me to no
I'm surprised
end.
he's alive.
That's what I'm saying. Like, he doesn't even look like he's breathing, and he's on national television. I don't get it. I hate watching these like forced games on me and ESPN where it's just like, oh, we were watching the Pelicans for the 20th time this year, even though they're 10 games under 500, and you get to watch the worst broadcast we have. I think local broadcasts are so much better.
I think with local broadcasting, which definitely makes it different, is the chemistry. Like, you know, those two guys, you know, or ladies as well. There's some lady local broadcasters out there too. They call like almost every single game together for years. So their chemistry is on point. Whereas, you know, of course, we talk about Breen, Gundy, and Jackson. Like, they've called so many games a year too. Their chemistry is great. But ESPN and TNT, they switch it around a lot. There's a lot of different rotations, which I like. You like seeing different pairings, but then there is a downside to it as well. So I definitely feel that the TNT announcers are not great. I do like some of the more ESPN guys. I like Mark Jones a lot too, who also does local broadcasting with the Sacramento Kings. He had a funny call the other day too with the Stimmy check, but I enjoy him. I think he's good. But yeah, I mean, I feel that, Matt. You know, you're someone who watches, you know, a lot of local, and I know Philadelphia in general with all their sports teams really thrives on that local broadcasting. New York's not as much like that, but I definitely feel your pain where you're coming from.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, I guess it's just a niche thing for me, but what's next on your list, Hunter?
Yeah, this also might be a bit of a homer one, but I've been saying it for years. I think Kobe's 81-point game is way more impressive than Wilt Chamberlain's. I don't think it's particularly close. For one, did the Wilt Chamberlain game happen? I don't know. I think it did. It makes sense, but we still don't know. There's no footage of it. There's like 20,000 people that said they were at the game, and I don't even think 20,000 people live in Hershey, Pennsylvania. So that's a lot of BS there. But yeah, there's a breakdown of it, and they said that Kobe's 81-point game would be equivalent to 130 points if he did that against Wilt Chamberlain in that game. Like if they took it back to 1965 or whatever, and there was no 3-point line either. So like Kobe would have got a 130 without even a 3-point line, and Wilt Chamberlain's game would be like a 56-point game or something like that. Watching Kobe Bryant, and let's not forget too that he didn't play the whole game. I'm sure Wilt Chamberlain played every freaking second of that game to claw his way to 100 points. Whereas Kobe Bryant literally had to sit out with 10 minutes left in the fourth. And who knows, maybe he could have went for 100 if he tried. So I, to this day, think Kobe Bryant 81-point game, most impressive game I have seen from any single player in NBA history or basketball
Yeah,
history.
I can get with that, Hunter, because obviously way different eras. Kobe Bryant game too. I remember that game being close for a lot of the game. The Lakers
Plus, they were
Raptors game.
down
I remember
early.
that. Yeah, they were. So he kind of had to go superhuman for them to win that game. That 81-point game was justified, and it got to a certain point where they just feeding him the basketball because you put the ball
Bruce
in your best
Booker
player's
was the
hand.
other option on offense.
Yeah, exactly. And that Lakers team, I remember not being very good. I think like the 2005 or 2006 Lakers at post
Yep.
Shaq. So they weren't very good. And Kobe Bryant was the Lakers back then. And then in terms of Wilt Chamberlain, obviously a fantastic player. Nobody's debating that. But who else is stopping him? In that era, Wilt Chamberlain was one of one. Nobody was even close. He was literally playing mailman out there. Like he was not playing anybody good. Obviously playing in Hershey, Pennsylvania. You're not going to get a lot of spectators. Not going to get a lot out there in central Pennsylvania. So I can get with that. I think obviously this eras are a lot different, like I said, and I think the competition's a lot better in Kobe Bryant's game than it was in Wilt Chamberlain's game because, like I said, nobody can stop Wilt Chamberlain back then. So I can get with that.
Yeah. So I've been saying that. I've been yelling that from the rooftops for years. Kobe, was in a similar situation that what Steph Curry is now. Bad team after, so many championships. Kobe did stay with the Lakers. He didn't leave, but maybe Steph Curry leaves and goes to a certain Los Angeles team. But I could pray for that. We'll see what happens. But anyways, though, Matt, what's next on the list for you?
Hunter, you're really trying to manifest that whole Steph Curry leaving the
I've been
Warriors
saying it
thing.
for a while.
You're really trying to manifest it into
This
reality.
might be a campaign podcast.
Yeah, so my next thing, it's not necessarily NBA, but more basketball in general. And I think the AAU is ruining basketball. For AAU teams, the goal is to be the flashiest player and to form these super teams in order to get recruited to big schools and get to the NBA. And now players coming up through the AAU don't get taught good fundamentals. Their defense sucks booty hole. They take a lot of horrible shots like deep threes and a lot of mid-range jumpers. And the worst thing to me is they don't know how to play with a team. All these kids just expect that they're going to be superstars and they're going to be the guy in the NBA and collegiate level because that's how they were treated in AAU ball. In reality, even the best NBA players know how to play as a team. AAU has made this game selfish. It has.
Do you think that's an unpopular opinion, though?
I think people like AAU because they like seeing the flashy stuff. I think they like seeing the dunks. I think they like seeing the deep shots. I think they like seeing the behind the back passes. I think people like it, and I think college recruiters like it too. I think they like seeing the flashy stuff because they know it's good marketing, and I think they know it's good for their schools. I think they know it's good for popularity. I think so. I think in that respect, I think it's unpopular. But I think from a basketball traditionalist perspective, like you and I would be, I think a lot of people would tend to agree that AAU sucks.
Okay, yeah, because I'm totally on your board. I think AAU has completely ruined basketball. That's why I was curious. Do other people really think it's a good thing? Now, of course, it's great because a lot of these players can compete against each other, or compete against the best of the best. But it's really interesting too because we look at the best players entering the NBA. A lot of them are European players and guys who play overseas, so they don't do the AAU crap. It's guys like John Morant, who was the worst kid on his basketball team, had to come up, grind his way up. Zion Williamson, same thing. He was an AAU star, but it took him a little bit to get there. LaMelo Ball played overseas, didn't really do the AAU stuff. It's interesting to think that a lot of the best players who are in the NBA, the best young players, were the ones who weren't as involved in AAU. I'm just saying, I totally agree with you. It's a whole lot of BS, and it's all political. It's all for clicks and views and stuff like that. And it's led to a bunch of entitlement, which I think is why basketball is so tainted and why I think college basketball is kind of screwed right now because now it's the whole transfer portal thing and guys can just go anywhere without consequence. They don't have to sit out a year, and that completely ruins college basketball and screws over these coaches in this program. I'm always someone who likes player empowerment and having that ability, but at the same time, though, there needs to be a fine line. And I think that's why college basketball is a complete mess right now, and it's why the NBA is a lot different too. I just think also a lot of these players entering the league, I just wonder how much they really love the game of basketball. I feel like it's been forced down their throats. I feel like there's few young NBA players that literally will dedicate themselves to be great, even though they have all the talent in the world.
I think it's a great point to bring up, Hunter, because even the number one pick this last year is Anthony Edwards, and he said, "I don't truly love basketball that much. I just do it because I'm really good at it," which incredible flex by him, first of all. But second of all, I do tend to agree with you. Definitely in terms of the sense of entitlement that these players kind of have with this AAU because they're told that they're the ish, they're really good, and that they're going to be the ish when they get to the NBA, and it's just not true. And I think it's really important for you to bring up the fact that LaMelo was not an AAU guy, even though he did cherry pick and score 91 points in a game in high school. That's besides the point. He grew up overseas, and I think, guys like Luka Doncic and all this stuff, they are really, really important players.
Yeah. And like you said, it's ruined the game of basketball. It's like, honestly, like James Harden, phenomenal player, but when he was playing in Houston, that's kind of what it reminded me of, is AAU ball, where the best player just gets the ball and everyone stands in the corners. So I'm glad that, he plays within the actual system now in Brooklyn. Steve Nash kind of kept him in check. But yeah, I totally agree with you. I guess maybe it is an unpopular opinion. I don't know, but that's one I completely get behind, in my opinion. Next on my list, though, is actually going to involve James Harden. I will talk you through it a little bit because it might sound a little confusing. I think James Harden should have 2 MVPs, but I also don't think he should have won the year he actually won, if that makes sense. So I think he should have 2 total MVPs, but not including the one he actually won. So I think the year Russell Westbrook won MVP, I think James Harden should have got it. The Rockets were arguably the best team in the NBA that season. They almost beat the Warriors and maybe would have if Chris Paul didn't get hurt. And then James Harden was 2 rebounds away from averaging a triple-double. He led the league in assists. He was second in points per game and just 2 rebounds away. And we were so sensationalized, like, oh my God, Russell Westbrook's averaging a triple-double, which is phenomenal. That is very hard to do. Let's give Russ his props where it's due. But, and I know I kind of contradict myself on my Steph Curry take here, but the Thunder weren't nearly as good. And so I get maybe Russell Westbrook, like Curry, had to single-handedly carry his team because that was the first year without Kevin Durant. And they did not have Paul George yet. It was kind of like the bridge year for them. But James Harden was doing basically the same thing and winning way more basketball games. At least for Steph Curry, it's kind of weird because the Nuggets aren't great and Embiid's missed a lot of games, which does open up the door for Curry, in my opinion. But I don't think the door was open for Westbrook. And then he proceeded to average 2 more seasons with a triple-double and was like, oh, okay, this is great, but it's really just stats at this point. And then he might do it this year too with the Wizards. So again, it was something unique and stuff, but I feel like people voted for the storyline, not for who was actually the most valuable player that season.
Yeah, I think so too. And everybody was just so wowed by that statistic at that point because it was the first time since Oscar Robertson, right, that somebody had averaged a triple-double in a season. And, when it came down to it, Russell Westbrook, they loved the storyline too, especially after Kevin Durant left, because everybody wanted to be Team Westbrook. So I feel like the media was on his side all year, and they were just wowed by what he kept doing. And I've had my gripes with Westbrook. I've been pretty public about that on this podcast. I think he's kind of a fraudulent player, kind of like a stat patter, if you will. But that season was pretty special, I will say. But like you said, you brought up some other guys that definitely deserved it too. And I think people just got behind the storyline for Russell Westbrook.
Yeah. Oh, let me get my other ones too. So I think that which one was it? It was, I'm trying to think which year Giannis won MVP that I didn't particularly agree with. I think it was the last one. Oh, nope. Sorry. That's different. The first year Giannis won MVP, James Harden averaged 35 points per game and the Rockets were really good. And Giannis, that was the one year I was like, I don't know. Harden might have won that one. That one was a little debatable. I thought Harden had a really good season too. And I could have maybe leaned toward taking Harden there for his second MVP. So that was my other one. Although I'm a lot more sold on the first one with Westbrook. The year Harden won it, all I'm going to say is LeBron James played 82 games and single-handedly carried the Cavs without Kyrie Irving there. And I think LeBron James should have won most valuable player that year. I thought it was one of LeBron's best individual seasons of all time, and he didn't win it. So that's why I'm like, I think Harden might have 2 MVPs, but I don't think he should have won the one he actually won.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to think back to Harden and Giannis one because I remember him averaging so many points that
35.
year.
35.
Yeah. So Harden won it the year before, though, right?
Yeah.
The year before Giannis won his first one. So it could have been I'm telling you, voter fatigue is a very real thing. I was shocked that Giannis won back-to-back. But people, they hate giving back-to-back MVPs. They hate it because the voter fatigue is a very real thing, man. Don't hate on it. So I agree Harden's a great player. He's obviously he's got the one MVP award. He could arguably have more than the LeBron James season you brought up, where he didn't win his last year at the Cavs, I believe you're talking about, without Kyrie. I think he had a phenomenal year that year. I mean, the Cavs did take a big tumble down. They were the 4 seed that year, But honestly, without LeBron James, that team, wow, that's a awful butcher of his name. But without LeBron James on that team, they're not only not a 4 seed, they're not even in the playoffs without LeBron
Yeah,
James.
they were in the
So
lottery when he wasn't there. They were terrible.
exactly. Yeah, they were in the lottery every year. He wasn't there. Then he was there for 4 years. They were a finals contender literally all 4 years. Then he left again and became a lottery team again. So I think that just shows how bad that team was without LeBron, and we all knew it.
It's a shame because LeBron might have finally won an MVP this year had he not gotten hurt. He'd at least be in the conversation. But
Absolutely.
I guess it's just the basketball god saying it's okay. Just go win championships instead. But all right, so that's going to be next on my list. So what else for you?
So I have 2 left, I believe. Do you have 2 left?
I also have 2 left.
All right, cool. So this one is you had a homer pick, so I'm gonna have a homer pick too. If Kawhi's shot doesn't go in, the Sixers go to the NBA Finals that year. The Sixers would have won that Game 7 in overtime. They had all the momentum at the end of that game. Next series against Milwaukee, that Sixers team matched up so well with the Bucks. Simmons and Butler both could have neutralized Giannis the same way Kawhi did in their series, and the Sixers win that series too. And I think they had a lot of good scoring, and I think the Sixers home court would have played a big role. And I think if I remember correctly, that year the Sixers and Bucks played after Jimmy Butler got traded to the Sixers, and the Sixers beat them pretty handily. So I get behind that. And then in the NBA Finals, they would have played Golden State. Who knows what happens, especially in terms of the KD and Clay injuries. Maybe they don't even happen. I'm not saying the Sixers would have won that series, but I will say they would have been very competitive. They beat them earlier that season pretty handily in Golden State when both teams were at full strength. So I think about this way too often, Hunter. I think that team was too good to lose in the second round, and I blame Brett Brown eternally forever.
This is what keeps you up at like 2 a.m. You're like, quiet
Yes.
like that.
Mhm.
All right, that's fair.
Yes.
I agree and disagree. I do think if they beat the Raptors, they might have beaten the Bucks. For the reasons that you've laid out. I actually don't think that they would have beaten Golden State, though. I don't. I think that Kawhi.
Yeah,
Leonard was so
that's what I'm saying. Like,
insane.
I don't even know if they would have like won more than one game in that
Yeah.
series. But
Kawhi Leonard was so insane that NBA Finals, and so was like Fred VanVleet and stuff. Like the Raptors really struck lightning in a bottle in that series. Like they were a lot went right for them, but they also like really did their thing. And Nick Nurse, a phenomenal head coach. Brett Brown, not so much. I think that would have probably been their detriment too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and a very fast-paced team, the Golden State Warriors. And I think the Raptors had a really high, fast pace of play too. Sixers not so much, especially under Brett Brown. But next on my list, all right, I'm gonna walk you through it a little bit. Maybe not as much of an unpopular opinion, but something that I feel like the public doesn't talk about a lot, and so I want to like give it some light. So Dwayne Wade, 2006 NBA Finals. We talk about, oh, well, he had Jason Williams and Shaquille O'Neal and Alonzo Mourning and Gary Payton, all those big names. Dwayne Wade is the only reason they won that series. I don't care what anyone else thinks. And I got the numbers to back it up too. Dwayne Wade averaged 34.7 points per game, 3.8 assists, 7.8 rebounds, 1 block, 2.7 steals, and 43.5 minutes per game in a 6-game series against Dallas. Antoine Walker and Shaq were the only other players to average double digits for Miami, and it was 13.8 and 13.7. Do we not talk like Dwayne Wade? I don't think gets the credit he deserves at all as a basketball player because he was second fiddle to LeBron James. But Dwayne Wade in that NBA Finals, it was one of the best runs in NBA history. I don't want to hear it. People don't talk about it enough. Dwayne Wade is one of the greatest players of all time, and I know he is retired, but like I've been saying, give the man his flowers where it's due. And I don't understand why people don't talk about this 06 run enough. Maybe it's because LeBron and the big three and people want to discredit Dwayne Wade. But let's not forget that dude won a championship before LeBron got there too.
Yeah, and Dwayne Wade was like the talk of the town that year too because he was so young. He was like he really burst onto the scene that year, carried that team to the NBA Finals because they weren't even expected to make the finals that year, but they did. They went on a miracle run like you talked about. But I think the main reason people kind of like don't talk about it that much is because there's this big conspiracy that the 2006 NBA Finals was a little bit rigged because I think the Mavs won the first 2 games and then in order to get the Heat back in the series, they kind of just like the officiating wasn't that great or something like that. I've seen videos on this, but people think the 2006 NBA Finals was rigged. That does not discourage, though, the fact that Dwayne Wade was awesome in that series. He was the reason they won the NBA Finals. Shaq was on that team, and Shaq really wasn't that great in that series. I
No,
mean, he was
big
Shaq,
miss.
but he was serviceable in that series. Like, he was a great big man, but he wasn't Shaq. Like, he wasn't the Lakers Shaq with that Heat team. He was starting to get up there in age. Dwayne Wade was the guy on that team, and for him to be so young, 24 years old, and be the guy on an NBA Finals team, win MVP, like you said, doesn't get talked about enough.
Yeah, and let's also not forget too that like you said, Shaq was old. That's why the Lakers traded him, because he was getting up there in age, and they're like, look, we got Kobe Bryant, who similarly to Dwayne Wade was a young superstar, and they're like, we got to build around this guy, Shaq. We're not going to pay you that money, and so obviously he took him and led them to a championship. But this was single-handedly Dwayne Wade's. I mean, sure, a couple of role players did their thing. Of course, it takes a team to win, but Dwayne Wade in that NBA Finals and that playoff run was unlike any other player. 35 points per game out in the finals. Like, we talk about LeBron having those type of games. Dwayne Wade did that. Let's not forget. Put some respect on Flash's name.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, yeah, he was incredible in that series, and I mean, it's important to bring up the fact that he was awesome before LeBron got there. In the early 2010s, there was a reason LeBron wanted to go play with D Wade, is because he was awesome before that. And I think even D Wade's Heat teams were better than all of LeBron's Cavs teams too, because the Heat surrounded him with talent, and they consistently put Dwayne Wade in good situations and gave Dwayne Wade a good amount of money. And Dwayne Wade took a pay cut so that they could get LeBron and Chris Bosh to come join the Heat. That doesn't get talked about enough either. Dwayne Wade is a great basketball player, and even more importantly, a great guy too.
Yeah, I think maybe the most unselfish superstar, him and Steph Curry, probably the most unselfish
Mm.
superstars in NBA history.
Absolutely.
But what rounds out the list for you here, Matt?
So this might be my most popular unpopular opinion, but I'm going to take it like a step further, I guess. But inconsistent officiating and soft calls are ruining today's NBA, and it's going to drive away fans. So this gets talked about a lot on social media, and it's going to start seeping in with this generation. Do players whine and complain a lot? Yes, absolutely, it's nauseating. But in the same respect, these officials are bad, man. For a league that has full-time officials, like, this is their profession. This is their only thing that they're doing. They are not very good at it, man. And the worst part of it all is the fact they have given out so many technical fouls this year. I don't know if that's because they had a meeting at the beginning of the season and said, we're not going to stand for any crap from players this year or what. But some of these techs that have been given out this year have been Charmin ultra soft to the max. And I think it's going to drive away fans. I think fans are going to start getting fed up with this crap. People are obviously going to love LeBron. They're going to love some of the individual players. But I don't think people are going to want to watch this game on a game-to-game basis, a regular season basis anymore, because it's just getting annoying that the officials are ruining this game a little bit.
I can see where you're coming from in terms of the techs and stuff. I do think that this younger generation of refs, because it's a new era now. The refs are new too. A lot of them are younger. A lot of those older guys are still there, but a lot of them also have retired and moved on to different things. So I do agree with that with the techs. I think it's gotten a little soft, but I'm someone, like, if I'm playing in a game, since I did play basketball growing up, the first 5 minutes of the game, I'm testing the refs. I'm trying to see, what are you going to let me do and what are you not? And all I ask is to be consistent. And sometimes it doesn't really seem that way. And I will say, it is a very hard job to be a ref. I give my grandpa credit, because he's reffed football, he's umpired softball. I know it's not easy doing that. So I gotta give the credit to them where it's due. And he has won Suffolk County PL Ref of the Year before, and umpire. So shout out grandpa one time. But I will say that the one part I kind of disagree with you on is that people are going to stop watching, because my question is, what are they going to watch? Because college basketball, the officiating's not great in that either. So I don't know if it's going to drive away fans. I wouldn't say that extent. If anything, I think it brings people together on Twitter, in the NBA Twitter sphere, and they complain together as one. But so that's where I kind of wouldn't take it that extra step, but I do understand your pain.
Okay, so I'll kind of change it then. Instead of driving away fans, because you're not going to drive away the diehards like you and I. You're not going to drive those people away. But it's more like the fair weather fans are like, oh, I'll watch it if it's on. It's going to drive those people away, which unfortunately still counts towards your revenue, which still counts towards your NBA viewership. It counts towards your national broadcast viewership. Those guys that are kind of inconsistent with the viewing, But I think it's going to drive away kind of like the new fans that are looking to get into it, if you know what I mean. So instead of driving out the consistent diehard fans like you and I, it's going to drive out the fans that are looking like, hey, maybe I'll give this a shot, and they'll watch a game and they'll be like, this is horrible because the officiating is ruining the game. It's it's a hot take for a reason. It's an unpopular opinion for a reason, but I think it's going to have an effect. I really do.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be the one I'm not fully on with your unpopular opinions. I agreed with a lot of them, but
Yeah.
I'm not fully bought in yet. To
I mean,
that.
I'll take 4 out of 5. I'll take that.
That's pretty good. Last but not least on my list is going to be about Trae Young. I think right now he is one of the best, like premier franchise changing, like young guards and young players in this league. And I know like people are like, well, Trae Young's really good. I get that. But I don't think people really give him the credit that he actually deserves. He's averaging 24 points per game, over 8 assists for his entire career in 3 seasons. That's a career average. And that's, and rookie years are kind of a wash because it's like, oh, like you're a rookie, but still did have a great rookie season. Trae Young is so freaking good at basketball. He might be a top 10 scorer and passer in the NBA right now. And he was a one and done too at Oklahoma. So he's a young player, I believe about 22-ish years old. And I would take him over John Morant. I'd take him over LaMelo Ball. I'd take him over De'Aaron Fox. I'd take him over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. A lot of those young guys, I'm taking Trae Young. And maybe some of them might be better than him down the road. We'll see. Some of those guys are younger. But Trae Young is really good. And we talk about the Hawks and how we don't think they're that great. Well, regardless, they still are the 4th seed in the East. And the only really consistent player on that team is Trae Young. He doesn't have a whole lot of help outside of that. A lot of those young players that they drafted with all those draft picks have not been all that impressive outside of like maybe John Collins. They, in my opinion, like I've been saying, did an awful job in free agency, and it showed. I think that Trae Young does not get the credit he deserves. Everyone kind of complains about how he does that stupid thing where he backs his rear end up and gets the foul calls and stuff. It's annoying, but Trae Young also was introducing moves to the NBA that we haven't seen before. Him nutmegging guys like it was nothing. Some of those step back moves, we did not see that in the NBA yet. So I think he is quite literally, in a sense, transcended or maybe just carry the torch with some of his antics and some of the stuff he can do on the basketball court. Other guys mimic it, and I think Trae Young is one of the most unique guys in the NBA, and I think he's a superstar in the making.
Yeah, I think I actually agree with this, Hunter. I think the biggest thing is, in terms of the Trae Young conversation, is people like to criticize Atlanta because they obviously made the famous trade now where it was Luka Doncic for Trae Young, and everybody kind of criticized it. And especially coming into this season, everybody's like, "Oh, how could you give up on Luka? Luka's a fantastic player," but I think Trae Young is kind of underrated in that deal because they think Trae Young is so much worse than Luka Doncic. I honestly don't think the gap is that big, if at all. I mean, both players pretty much suck on defense, but
Yeah, that's
Trae Young's a better 3-point shooter. I think they're pretty equal in passing, but coming out of college, Trae Young was dubbed Steph Curry that can shoot. Or not that can shoot. Steph Curry that can pass. That can pass really, really well. Not saying that Steph Curry can't pass, but Trae Young, the way he passes, like you said, nutmegging guys, stuff that we have not seen before. Trae Young has been that kind of guy. And I think it took him a little bit to get acclimated, especially with the team itself around him not being very good, being in a bad situation. But now look at him. I mean, even just getting a little bit of help. I mean, you and I both know that roster outside of him is not very good, like you said. It has not panned out. And even just getting a little bit of help, a little bit of veteran help, and he's got this team as the 4th seed. Obviously, I said they were an overachieving team earlier in the podcast, but you got to give them the credit where they're deserved, and Trae Young deserves all the credit.
Yeah, I feel like when we talk about the best young players in the league, we bring up Zion and John Morant and LaMelo Ball, and rightfully so, love all those guys. But I just feel like Trae Young just kind of gets stumped a little bit, and I don't understand why. Because he's an extremely fun player to watch. Seems like a great guy, someone you can root for. I get the Hawks maybe aren't the biggest basketball market, and they don't get a whole lot of national games. I'm sure that has something to do with it. But Trae Young is an absolute dog, and I feel like he's one of those young players that wants to be great, and he's someone that genuinely loves the game of basketball because you could tell. Look at the skill. Trae Young, if he walked in the room with you and me, Matt, you wouldn't think he's an NBA player. He does not look like one, but he's an absolute monster. And I think that the sky is the limit for this dude. I think he's extremely good and doesn't get the credit.
Yeah, I think so too. And if he can unlock any sort of defense, this guy's going to have some untapped potential. But I think offensively, there's really not many ways his game could be better. I mean, he's an efficient player. He gets to the free throw line, which is the way to get points in the NBA. This, especially nowadays. Especially, I hate that backup move. I hate that with a passion, but it works. If the refs are going to call it, keep doing it.
Yeah, I don't blame him.
He's playing them. He's using them against their own system. So if he knows the rules, he clearly does. Keep doing it. I mean, keep getting those points. Keep getting to the free throw line. That's how you're going to win games in the NBA.
Yeah, I can't, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But it's going to wrap it up here on Ball Don't Lie. 45 episodes. Even got David Green on the podcast today, which was awesome. I'm glad he was able to do it one more time. Next week, it's going to be our last, podcast, which is wild to think. It's been a hell of a journey. Penn State Sports Night definitely, changed both of our lives for the better. We wouldn't have met otherwise. Well, maybe we would have, because we had surprisingly a whole lot of classes together, that we didn't really plan out. But anyways, though, we always love the support, and we'll catch you next week.
Shout out David Green for coming on. It was great meeting you, man. I had a great time with you.
Thank you for watching this edition of Penn State Sports Night. If you're a fan of our content, please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more clips. Also, follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action. For all my colleagues, we are Penn State Sports Night.